The full 1,700-word Part 1 story will be written here. Evan Carter never planned to play piano for strangers late at night, but life had a way of turning him into someone who simply did what needed to be done. At 34, he had already lived through more responsibility than most people twice his age. His daughter, Lily, was the reason he kept moving. She was 8 years old, full of questions, full of energy, and full of trust that her dad could handle anything. Evan wasn't sure that was true, but he tried. During the day, Evan worked at a small hardware store, stacking shelves and helping customers find screws, bolts, and paint cans. At night, he changed into a clean shirt, ran his fingers through his hair, and walked to a tiny cafe 3 blocks from their small apartment. The cafe owner, a kind man named Oliver, let Evan play piano there during the late shift. There was no official contract. If customers enjoyed the music, Oliver paid him a little extra. If the cafe was quiet, Evan still got a warm meal and a place to practice. For Evan, that was enough. The cafe wasn't the kind of place wealthy people visited. It was old but cozy, with warm yellow lights that made every table look soft and friendly. People came for the smell of roasted coffee beans, but they stayed for the calm atmosphere. After long days, exhausted workers often sat with their heads resting on their hands, letting the piano music wash the noise out of their minds. That night, Evan arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. He liked the feeling of being alone with the piano before the customers arrived. He opened the lid and pressed a single key to test the sound. It rang out softly. He smiled a little. The piano wasn't perfect, but it had character just like the cafe. As Evan warmed up his fingers, he thought about Lily. Her medical checkup was coming soon. The doctor had said she needed a treatment that wasn't cheap. Evan had been saving every spare dollar for months, but the total still felt impossibly far away. Sometimes he lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer he could keep pretending everything was fine, but he never let Lily see any of that. When she asked, he simply said, "We're doing great. I'll take care of it." And she always believed him. Evan let out a quiet breath and started playing. A few soft notes filled the room, rising gently above the hum of the espresso machine. The tune was one he had learned years ago from the person who mattered most, his late wife. Every time he played it, the memory of her warm laughter drifted back to him, giving him strength. By 9 o'clock, the cafe had several customers. A small group of students were whispering excitedly over textbooks. 2 old friends sat near the window, recovering from long days at work. A woman in a red coat typed on her laptop while sipping tea. Evan continued playing, letting the music adjust to the mood of the room. Outside, the city lights flickered under a cloudy sky. A sleek black car pulled up near the cafe, its engine humming softly. Evan didn't notice. He was too focused on keeping the melody smooth. The door opened, bringing in a gust of cold air. Conversations paused as a tall woman stepped inside. She looked like someone from a magazine, elegant, polished, and clearly wealthy. Her long coat appeared new, maybe even custom-made. She carried herself with confidence, but her expression suggested boredom with everything around her. This was Victoria Hawley, though Evan didn't know that yet. Most people in the city knew her name, especially anyone who read business news. Her family owned several major companies, and she was often described as the billionaire who never smiled. Rumors said she didn't trust anyone except herself. The cafe wasn't the kind of place Victoria normally visited, but tonight she had left a high-end charity gala early. The room had been filled with bright lights, fake smiles, and endless small talk. She needed a quiet place to breathe. When she saw the cafe lights, something pulled her inside. Victoria looked around, noticing the old wooden tables and the dusty chalkboard menu. Her heels clicked softly on the floor as she walked toward an empty table. People stole glances at her. She looked far too important for a place like this. Then she heard the piano. Her eyes drifted toward the small stage where Evan sat. His shirt wasn't expensive, and his shoes were worn, but he played with a calm focus that caught her attention. Victoria wasn't easily impressed, but she paused for a moment, listening. Oliver approached her with a polite smile. "Good evening. Can I get you anything?" "Tea. Something warm," she replied. She sat down, crossed her legs, and leaned back. When the tea arrived, she wrapped her hands around the cup and watched Evan play. His technique wasn't perfect, not in the way a trained concert pianist might be, but there was something real about it. Something raw. People weren't used to seeing that in Victoria's world. Still, she didn't let her face show much. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, as if challenging the music to impress her. Evan glanced up for just a second and saw her sitting there. He didn't recognize her as someone famous or wealthy, but he saw her cold expression. For a brief moment, nerves crept up his spine. She looked like someone who wouldn't hesitate to criticize. He pushed the thought away and kept playing as minutes passed. More customers noticed Victoria. Some whispered her name. A couple of people took pictures, which she ignored. She had grown used to being watched. When Evan finished the song, quiet applause spread across the cafe. Victoria clapped twice, lightly, almost sarcastically. "Interesting," she murmured. Evan nodded politely, unsure what she meant. A few songs later, Victoria stood and walked toward the piano. Her steps were slow and deliberate. Evan froze, his fingers hovering above the keys. She tilted her head, studying him. "You play well," she said, "but it feels like you're holding something back." Evan wasn't sure how to respond. "I'm doing my best." Victoria gave a small laugh, not cruel, but dismissive. "Best?" She echoed the word as if it tasted strange. "Tell me something. Do you know classical music? Real music?" Evan blinked. "I know some. Chopin?" she asked, testing him. "A little." His voice was calm, though his heart beat faster. Chopin wasn't easy. Victoria leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Play something from him. Play it." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "On my inheritance." Evan frowned. "What does that mean?" She smirked. "It means if you impress me, you can have it. Every penny." A few people nearby heard her and gasped quietly. The cafe murmured with surprise. Evan stared at her. He wasn't sure if she was joking or trying to embarrass him. Victoria's tone made it sound like a challenge she didn't expect him to meet. "Why would you say something like that?" he asked softly. "Because," she replied, smoothing her coat, "people say music reveals truth. I want to see yours." Her eyes glinted with amusement. "And besides, I doubt you can play Chopin well enough to surprise me." Evan held her gaze. He hated arrogance, but he didn't want to make a scene. "I'm not interested in games," he said. Victoria shrugged. "Then don't play." "But if you do." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small metal card, placing it on the piano. "This is the access key to one of my charity accounts. If you amaze me, I'll transfer the full amount to you." "No tricks." Oliver hurried over, whispering, "Miss, maybe this isn't." Victoria lifted a hand to silence him. "Let him decide." Evan looked down at the card. He didn't know exactly how much money was in that account, but judging by who she was, it had to be a lot. More than he'd ever see in his lifetime. He thought of Lily. He thought of the doctor's words. He thought of how many nights he had quietly counted every dollar in a small jar on their kitchen shelf. Then he looked back at Victoria. She stood straight, waiting, her expression confident and almost daring him to try. "You really think I can't do it?" Evan asked. She smiled. If you could, you wouldn't be playing here. The words stung. They were meant to dot. Evan slowly placed his hands on the keys. Not to start playing yet, but because touching the piano reminded him of why he played at all. Fine, he said quietly. I'll try. Not for pride. For my daughter. Victoria blinked. She hadn't expected such a calm answer. Evan closed the piano lid gently and stood. But not tonight. He wiped his fingers on a cloth and began packing his sheet music. If I'm going to play Chopin seriously, I need time. Victoria crossed her arms. How much time? 5 days, Evan said. I'll come to your place and play. My place? She raised a brow. And what makes you think I'll invite you? Because you're curious, he replied simply. Otherwise you would have already walked out. Victoria paused. For the first time, she had no comeback. 5 days, she repeated. 5 days, he confirmed. She nodded once and turned to leave the cafe. Her heels clicked sharply as she stepped outside and disappeared into the night. The cafe remained silent for several seconds. Before people finally started whispering again, Oliver approached Evan with wide eyes. Are you out of your mind? Evan let out a long breath. Maybe. Do you even know who she is? No, but I know what I have to do. Oliver sighed and patted his shoulder. Then I hope you're ready. Evan looked at the empty space where Victoria had stood. His stomach twisted with fear and hope all at once. 5 days. 5 days to prove himself. 5 days to win a chance that could change Lily's life. The full 1,700-word Part 2 story will be written here. Evan woke up early the next morning, long before the sun rose. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old refrigerator. He sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of plain coffee, staring at the calendar pinned to the wall. 5 days. That was all he had. He rubbed his eyes, still tired from playing the night before, but sleep had been out of reach. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the challenge replaying in his mind. Victoria's cold stare, the tiny smirk on her lips, the metal card on the piano. It didn't feel real, yet the pressure felt heavier than anything he had carried in years. Lily wandered into the kitchen, her small feet making soft taps on the floor. She was still in her pajamas, her hair messy, like a little lion's mane. Dad? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Why are you awake so early? Evan forced a smile. Just thinking. You hungry? She nodded, climbing onto a chair. Can we have pancakes? He chuckled. We don't have pancake mix. How about toast? Lily pretended to think deeply before agreeing. Okay, but with honey. As he made her breakfast, Evan wondered how much she understood. He never told her about the financial stress or the treatment costs. She didn't need to worry about things like that. She deserved a childhood untouched by fear. They ate quietly together. Lily kicked her legs happily under the table, humming a little tune. Evan recognized it. It was the same melody he had been practicing months ago. She always picked up songs quickly. Dad, Lily said with a mouth full of toast, are you practicing piano today? All day, he replied. She grinned. Good. I like it when you play. Her simple words eased something inside him. After walking her to school, Evan headed straight to the cafe. Oliver was already there, counting supplies. Morning, Oliver said. I heard you pacing around half the night. You nervous about? You know. He made a vague gesture. Nervous is one word, Evan muttered. Terrified? Oliver guessed, at 2. Oliver leaned against the counter. You're really going through with it? I have to. Do you even know a full Chopin piece? I know pieces of some, Evan admitted. But I can learn the rest if I practice nonstop. Oliver gave him a look. You sure this isn't too much? It doesn't matter if it is. I don't have another choice. Oliver sighed. Then at least use the back room. It's quieter. Evan thanked him and went to the small storage room that held an old, upright piano. It wasn't pretty, and some keys stuck if he pressed too lightly, but it worked. He sat down, took a deep breath, and started practicing. Hours passed. His fingers stumbled, stiff at first, but slowly the music took shape. Chopin's work wasn't just technical, it was emotional. Evan knew that if he wanted to move someone like Victoria, he had to pour everything into it. At lunchtime, Oliver brought him a sandwich. Eat, he insisted. Evan nodded gratefully and took a break. As he sat on a wooden crate, he checked his phone. No messages from Victoria. Not that he expected any. He opened the browser and searched her name. The results showed endless headlines. Billionaire heiress expands tech. Investments. Victoria Hawley donates millions to education. Program. Interview. The woman behind the Hawley. Fortune. There were also comments from people online calling her cold, distant, impossible to please. Evan sighed. What had he gotten himself into? People like her didn't usually waste time on someone like him. He didn't understand why she stayed to watch him play the night before. Maybe she was bored. Maybe she enjoyed challenging strangers. Maybe it was all a joke. But the card she left on the piano had been real. He remembered its weight in his hand, the engraved pattern, the small chip inside. He had given it back to Oliver for safekeeping. The thought of losing such a thing made him nervous. After lunch, Evan returned to the piano. He played until his hands ached. He practiced scales, repeated difficult passages, and counted rhythms aloud. He made mistakes, corrected them, made more, and kept correcting. The sun moved across the sky, but Evan barely noticed. Around 5 in the afternoon, he received a text from Lily's teacher, reminding parents about the school event the next day. He had forgotten all about it. With a groan, Evan packed up his music sheets and rushed to pick Lily up. She ran to him as soon as she saw him. Dad, guess what? I drew a picture today. Let me see, he said, kneeling beside her. She pulled a folded paper from her backpack. It showed a little girl holding hands with a man. Above them, she had drawn a big piano. That's you and me, Lily said proudly. And that's the music you're going to play. Evan felt his chest tighten. It's wonderful, sweetheart. I love it. As they walked home, Lily talked excitedly about everything that happened at school. Evan listened, but his mind drifted to the challenge again. After dinner, he helped Lily with her homework before tucking her into bed. Dad, she whispered sleepily, don't worry too much. You always make things work. He kissed her forehead. Good night, Lily. When she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table again. He copied music notes onto new sheets, practicing finger movements with his hands flat on the table to avoid waking her. He worked until his eyes blurred. For the next 2 days, this became his routine. Wake up early, take Lily to school, practice until he could barely move his fingers, pick her up, and continue working at night. He barely slept. On the 3rd day, something changed. While practicing a difficult passage, Evan felt a sudden wave of emotion. He couldn't explain it. Something inside him opened a memory he had kept locked away for a long time. He remembered the first time he played this piece for someone he loved. His late wife had stood beside him, guiding his hands gently, telling him to relax. Music isn't about perfection, she used to say. It's about honesty. Evan's hands trembled as he played, but he kept going. The notes flowed more naturally, carrying feelings he had buried under years of responsibility. By the evening, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: confidence. That confidence lasted until day 4, that morning. As Evan was packing sheet music into his bag, his phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Do not be late. Friday, 6 p.m., address below. He recognized the tone instantly. It had to be Victoria. He clicked the address. It was a location near the city outskirts. Large estate. Private property. He swallowed hard. Oliver peeked over his shoulder. That's her place? Evan nodded. Looks huge, Oliver said. Be careful. Rich people houses always feel like museums. They're too quiet. Evan laughed weakly. Thanks for the comfort. You going to practice there too? No more practice, Evan replied. I just have to trust myself now. Day 5 came faster than he expected. Lily woke up cheerful as always, unaware of how tense her father was. She asked him to braid her hair, and while doing it, his hands shook slightly. Dad, she asked softly, are you scared? He paused, a little. She turned around and hugged him tightly. You're going to do great. I know it. Evan held her close, wishing he could borrow some of her certainty. When he took her to school, she waved at him until she disappeared inside the building. He stood there for a moment, breathing slowly. This was it. He walked to the cafe to pick up his bag. Oliver had prepared a warm drink for him. For the nerves, Oliver said. Evan smiled gratefully. Thanks for believing in me. Always, Oliver replied. At 3 in the afternoon, Evan returned home to shower and change clothes. He wore a clean button-up shirt and the only pair of dress shoes he owned. They were slightly old, but polished. He looked at his reflection in the small bathroom mirror. He looked tired, but determined. At 4, he headed to the address Victoria sent. The city faded behind him as he walked. Large buildings turned into quiet neighborhoods, and into long roads lined with tall trees. After nearly half an hour, he reached a gated entrance. A security guard checked his name, then allowed him through. As he walked up the long driveway, Evan couldn't help staring at the enormous estate. The mansion was modern, with tall glass windows and perfectly trimmed gardens. It looked like something out of a magazine. Every step made his heart beat faster. He reached the front entrance. Before he could knock, the door opened. A woman in a black suit stood there. You must be Evan. Follow me. He stepped inside. The interior was even more breathtaking. Shiny floors, massive chandeliers, and furniture that probably cost more than his yearly salary. The woman led him through a long hallway. Where are we going? Evan asked quietly. To the music hall, she replied. Miss Halley is waiting. The full 1,700-word Part 3 story will be written here. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever as Evan followed the woman in the black suit. Every sound echoed the soft click of her heels, the faint hum of distant air vents, the rustle of Evan's shirt when he adjusted his sleeves. He felt small in the enormous space, like he didn't belong there. Everything around him looked too perfect, too expensive, too quiet. At the end of the hallway, the woman stopped in front of a double door made of dark polished wood. Without a word, she pushed it open and stepped aside. Inside, she said. Evan swallowed hard and walked through. The room he entered was enormous, much larger than anything he had expected. It wasn't a living room or a study. It was exactly what she had called it, a music hall. Tall ceilings stretched above him, decorated with soft lights that glowed like warm stars. The floor was smooth and dark, reflecting the faint shine of the lamps. On the far side of the room stood a grand piano, sleek, glossy, and beautiful. It was the kind of piano he had only seen in magazines. It looked untouched, like it had been waiting for someone to bring it to life. Standing beside, it was Victoria. She wore a simple but elegant outfit, her hair pulled back smoothly. She didn't look bored this time. Instead, she looked focused, as though she were inspecting the room before a performance. When she noticed Evan, she turned slightly, her expression unreadable. You're on time, she said. I try to be, he replied quietly. The woman in the suit closed the door behind him, leaving the two of them alone. Evan felt the weight of the silence. It was strange how quiet the room was. He could hear the sound of his own breathing. Victoria walked toward him, her heels making soft taps on the polished floor. "I hope you used the 5 days well," she said. "I did," Evan answered, though his voice wasn't as firm as he wished. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You look nervous." "I am," he admitted, "but I'm ready." Victoria seemed to consider his words. Then she gestured to the grand piano. "Go on." He stepped toward it slowly, almost reverently. The piano looked even more stunning up close. He gently touched the edge of the lid, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath his fingers. "Sit," Victoria said. He pulled out the bench and sat down. The bench was adjustable and far more comfortable than the hard wooden seats he was used to. His heart thumped loudly in his chest. Victoria moved to a nearby chair, a tall, high-backed seat that looked like something a judge might use. She crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap. "I want to see what you can do," she said. "But don't rush. Take a moment." Evan nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. He placed them on the keys, feeling the weight and smoothness of the ivory. It felt different from the cafe's piano or the old one in the storage room. This piano responded instantly, every key perfectly balanced. He closed his eyes. He thought about Lily, her smile, her laughter, her trust. He thought about his late wife, her gentle voice reminding him to breathe. He thought about the 5 long days he had spent practicing until his fingertips throbbed. When he opened his eyes again, he felt calmer. He began to play. The first notes were soft, almost fragile. The sound filled the room, clear and warm, floating gently through the air. Each note carried emotion, not just technique. Evan didn't try to impress. He simply told a story through the keys. Victoria's expression didn't change at first, but something in her eyes softened as the music grew. Evan played the opening with care, letting the melody rise and fall naturally. He felt the music, letting it guide him. The room seemed to fade away. The only things that existed were the piano, the notes, and the emotions they carried. When the piece reached a difficult passage, Evan's hands moved instinctively. The long hours of practice paid off. The twisting runs and delicate rhythms flowed smoothly. Though his heart raced, Victoria leaned forward slightly. She hadn't expected this. She had expected tension, stiffness, hesitance, not this level of control, not this level of emotion. Evan continued, weaving through the challenges of the piece. The melody shifted, turning brighter, then sadder, then hopeful again. He poured everything into it, every worry, every fear, every dream for Lily. Then came the part he had struggled with the most during practice. His fingers trembled, and for a moment he almost lost the rhythm. But he didn't stop. He remembered why he was here. He remembered Lily's small arms hugging him, telling him he would do great. He steadied himself and kept going. The music swelled, filling the hall with a sound so full it felt alive. Victoria took a quiet breath. She wasn't used to being affected by anything, especially not music played by a man she barely knew. But there was something undeniably powerful in the way he played. Not perfect, but true. When Evan reached the final notes, his heart felt like it had been squeezed dry. The ending was soft, gentle, like a whisper. The last note lingered in the air before fading into silence. Evan lowered his hands and slowly looked up. The room was completely still. Victoria sat motionless, her gaze locked on him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a slight shine in her eyes. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she stood. Her heels clicked sharply as she walked toward him. Evan's stomach twisted. He didn't know what she was thinking. He didn't know if she was impressed, disappointed, amused, or angry. She stopped beside the piano. "That," she said quietly, "was not what I expected." Evan swallowed. "Good or bad?" Victoria didn't answer right away. She took a long breath. "Stand up," she said softly. Evan did. She walked around the piano, slowly, as if thinking through her words. "You play." "With honesty," she said. "Most people play to show off. You play because it means something to you." "It does," Evan said. "It means a lot, I could tell." She stopped in front of him and studied his face. Her expression softened, just a little. "Tell me," she asked, "why did you accept the challenge?" "For my daughter," he said without hesitation. "She needs a treatment. I've been trying to save for months. This was a chance I couldn't ignore." Victoria's eyes flickered with surprise. "A treatment?" she repeated softly. Evan nodded. "She's fine for now, but the doctor said she needed soon, and I can't pay for it alone." A silence settled between them. Victoria turned her head slightly, staring at the piano instead of him. She looked lost in thought. "You're a single parent," she said quietly. "Yes, that must be difficult." Evan nodded. "Some days, but she's worth everything." Something in Victoria's expression shifted. A tiny crack appeared in her composed exterior, as if his words had touched something she didn't show others. She stepped closer. "Come with me," she said. Without waiting for his response, she walked toward a door on the side of the room. Evan hesitated for a moment before following. She led him down a smaller corridor into a quieter part of the mansion. They entered a room with large windows overlooking a garden lit by soft lights. The room felt warmer, more personal. Victoria gestured for him to sit on a small sofa. She took the chair opposite him. "You surprised me," she began. "I didn't think you'd take this seriously." "I didn't have a choice," he replied. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You did. Most people would have walked away." Evan didn't know how to respond. Victoria looked down at her hands for a moment before lifting her gaze. "When I challenged you," she said slowly, "I expected you to fail. I expected you to forget, or give up, or come here unprepared." "Why?" Evan asked. There was no anger in his voice, only curiosity. "Because that's what most people do," she answered. "But I'm not most people." "No," she agreed quietly. "You're not." Another moment of silence passed. Then she stood. "Come back to the music hall," she said. Evan followed her again, unsure what to expect. When they returned, she walked to a small table near the wall. On it sat a sleek laptop and a card reader. She picked up the metal card, the same one she had placed on the piano 5 days earlier. Evan's chest tightened. Was she really going to honor her promise? Victoria inserted the card into the reader. Evan watched, breath held. She typed in a password, her fingers moving quickly. A screen lit up with numbers, large numbers, more than Evan had ever imagined seeing. "This account," she said slowly, "was set aside for charity, helping people who deserve help." Evan swallowed hard. Victoria turned the screen slightly toward him. "And I think you deserve it." His eyes widened. His knees felt weak. Victoria reached for the keyboard again. "I'm going to transfer the full balance to you," she said. "Every penny." Evan couldn't speak. His throat felt tight. Victoria glanced at him. "Unless you want to refuse." I don't," he whispered. "I can't. My daughter." "I know," she said gently. She clicked a button. The transfer began, and just like that, his entire world changed. Evan stood frozen as the numbers shifted across the screen. A few seconds later, the transfer confirmation appeared. Victoria removed the card and turned off the laptop. "It's done." Evan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. His legs shook. He sat down on the piano bench to steady himself. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you give this to me?" Victoria lowered her gaze. "Because your music." She paused, searching for words. "It reminded me that not everything can be measured by wealth. And because your daughter deserves a chance." Evan felt something warm rise in his chest. Gratitude, relief, hope. "Thank you," he said softly. Victoria nodded. "Don't thank me yet. Use it well." He nodded firmly. "I will." For the first time since meeting her, Victoria smiled, a small, real smile. "You should go home," she said. "Tell your dad." Evan stood in the center of the grand hall, his hands still trembling slightly from the performance he had just given. The last notes of the Chopin piece still seemed to hover in the air, drifting softly like a memory that refused to fade. For a long moment, no one spoke. The room felt breathless, as if even the walls were trying to understand what had just happened. He slowly lifted his eyes and glanced around. People were frozen in their seats, staring at him with a kind of stunned silence he had never seen before. Some looked confused about their own feelings, others deeply moved. A few wiped at their eyes, pretending the lights made them tear up. And then his gaze met hers. Victoria stood near the front, her expression unreadable. At first, she had been sitting with a confident pose, one hand on her hip, the other lazily holding a glass. But now her posture had softened. She looked almost fragile. Her eyes were slightly red, though she blinked quickly to hide it. Evan didn't know what to make of that. She had been the one who laughed at him, who made the challenge as if he were just a joke in her expensive night. And now she couldn't bring herself to speak. The silence stretched until it felt heavy. Finally, someone in the back began clapping. It was slow at first, an uncertain rhythm, as if the person wasn't sure it was appropriate. Then another joined, and another. Within seconds, the entire hall filled with applause. Loud, echoing, growing. Evan felt a wave of warmth rise in his chest. Not pride exactly, more like relief, mixed with something deeper. Something he hadn't felt in a long time, that maybe his late wife's lessons weren't lost to time, that the hours he spent practicing while Lily slept had meant something. He bowed slightly, unsure what else to do. A few people stood, then more. Suddenly, it became a standing ovation. But Victoria, she stayed still. She didn't clap. She didn't move. She looked at him as if trying to fit him into a new place in her mind. At last, when the applause finally faded, she stepped forward. That was... She hesitated. Her voice wasn't cold this time. It wasn't mocking. It was almost soft. That was unexpected. Evan nodded once. "I did my best." Victoria looked around as if aware that everyone was waiting for her reaction. For the first time that night, she seemed uncomfortable. "You didn't play it like a performance," she said quietly. "You played it like it meant something." Evan didn't know what to say to that. It did mean something. It meant everything. "Music isn't just sound," he said simply. "It's memory." Her eyes flickered, as if those words hit a part of her she rarely showed. For a moment, neither spoke. Then her assistant stepped forward hurriedly, whispering, "Ma'am." "The challenge." Victoria blinked, as if coming out of a daze. The crowd leaned in slightly, curious. She exhaled slowly. Yes, the challenge. She had made it as a joke, something thrown out with careless confidence, like tossing money into a fountain for entertainment. But now it hung in the air, like a promise she wasn't prepared to honor. Evan stood straight, not demanding anything, not even thinking about the money in that moment. He just waited. Victoria stepped closer to him, lowering her voice slightly, though others could still hear. "Tell me," she said, "why do you play like that?" Evan looked down at the piano keys, running his fingers lightly across the smooth surface, as if calming himself. "Because someone I love taught me to," he said. "And because someone I love now depends on it." Victoria's eyes softened for a second. "Your daughter." He nodded. She swallowed, and it seemed like her throat tightened. Something in her expression changed. She looked away, like she was trying to hide a part of herself. "Follow me," she said suddenly. She turned and walked toward a side room. Evan hesitated, but followed. The assistant and a couple of guests tried to trail behind, but Victoria shot them a sharp look, and they immediately stepped back. Inside the smaller room, the noise of the hall grew faint. The room was decorated with modern art, glass sculptures, and soft lighting. It was quiet and calm, the opposite of the grand hall. Victoria took a breath, then faced him. "I underestimated you," she said directly. Evan gave a small shrug. "Most people do." She let out a short, almost embarrassed laugh. "I'm not proud of that. I came tonight expecting to be entertained. Maybe even distracted, not moved." Evan didn't respond. He wasn't sure if she wanted comfort, or if she was simply trying to make sense of her own feelings. "Do you know why I made that challenge?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because everything in my life feels like noise," she said quietly. "People pretending. People wanting something. People agreeing with me because it benefits them. I thought watching you try to impress me would be just another meaningless thing to fill a night." She paused, then added, "But you didn't try to impress me. You're the first person in years who didn't." Evan wasn't sure what to say. He felt like he was seeing a different side of her, a side she didn't show to anyone. "That challenge," she said, her voice steadying. "I gave it in arrogance. But it was still a promise." She turned slightly, looking at the floor, as if she needed a second to gather herself. "I always keep my promises," she finished. Evan nodded once. "I'm not here to force anything. I just came because you asked me to play." Victoria looked up at him, then really looked at him. "That's exactly why you deserve it," she said. They returned to the hall together. The crowd watched closely. Victoria walked to the center of the room, her heels clicking softly. She cleared her throat lightly. "Earlier tonight," she began, "I made a statement I did not expect to be tested on. People murmured. I said that if he played Chopin on my inheritance, I would give him every penny." A few chuckles rose from the guests. "It was said in jest," she continued firmly, "but promises are promises. And he delivered more than I ever could have expected." She turned to Evan. "So," she said, "I will honor it." A gasp echoed through the hall. Some guests whispered frantically. Others stared with disbelief. Evan blinked slowly, not trusting what he heard. Victoria's voice softened. "We'll handle the legal details in the morning." Her assistant's jaw dropped so far, he almost tripped stepping forward. "Ma'am," he stuttered. She raised a hand. "It's final." Then she turned back to Evan. "But money aside, I want you to know something." He waited. "No one has made me feel anything real in a very long time." "You did tonight." Evan felt a strange mix of emotions. Gratitude, surprise, confusion. He wasn't used to getting praise, especially not from someone like her. "Thank you," he said simply. The room seemed to exhale as the crowd broke into applause again. Cameras from a few reporters who had been invited began flashing. The story was already spreading. Victoria took a few steps back, giving him space. People approached him, some praising his skill, others asking how long he'd been playing, others just wanting to shake his hand. Evan felt overwhelmed, but he tried to stay polite. Every now and then, he glanced at Victoria. She stood near the side, watching quietly, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. The night slowly drew to an end as guests left. Conversations faded, and the lights dimmed. Evan finally stepped outside into the cool air, grateful for the quiet. He didn't expect Victoria to follow him, but she did. "Do you need a ride?" she asked. He shook his head with a small smile. "I'll take the bus." She hesitated. "May I offer something else then?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'd like to visit your daughter someday," she said. "If that's okay." Evan was surprised. "Why?" She gave him a shy, almost nervous smile. "Because I think she's the reason you played the way you did. And I'd like to meet the person who inspires that kind of heart." Evan didn't answer right away. He wanted to be careful. People like her didn't usually walk into the lives of people like him without a reason. But then he remembered the look in her eyes earlier, the look of someone who was tired of pretending. He nodded slowly. "Maybe one day." She smiled softly. "Then I'll wait for that day." They parted ways as the streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. Evan walked toward the bus stop, his heart heavy with exhaustion, but warm with the strange dignity of the night. Victoria watched him go, feeling something in her own life shift in a way she didn't fully understand. In two very different worlds, two very different hearts had quietly begun to change. Evan woke up the next morning, still unsure if the night before had been real. For a moment, he stayed lying on his small couch, staring at the low ceiling of his apartment as the early sunlight crept in through the blinds. His head felt heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from trying to process everything that had happened. The applause. The room full of people who had watched him like he was someone important. Victoria's voice shaking as she spoke. Her saying she would honor every penny. It all felt unreal. He checked on Lily, who was still curled up in her small bed, hugging her stuffed bear. Her breathing was soft and calm. She looked peaceful in the way only children could be. Looking at her made last night's events wash over him again, this time with a wave of gratitude. He made breakfast quietly, trying not to wake her. The aroma of toast filled the little kitchen, and soon Lily's sleepy voice called out, "Dad?" Evan smiled and walked to her room. "Good morning, kiddo." She stretched and yawned. "You came home late." "Yeah," he said softly. "But it went well. Did she like your music?" Lily asked as she rubbed her eyes. A slow smile spread across his face. "She did." Lily grinned, that warm, proud little smile that always gave him strength. "I knew it." He lifted her from bed, set her in her seat, and placed breakfast in front of her. "Will we be okay now?" she asked through a mouthful of toast. Evan paused, unsure how much to say. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, not until everything was official. "We're going to be better," he said. "I'm not sure how much better yet, but something changed last night." Lily nodded with complete trust. "I'm glad." After breakfast, he walked her to school, holding her hand tightly. The fresh morning air helped clear his mind, but the nerves returned when he thought about what came next. He hadn't even checked his phone yet. Surely there were messages, maybe even news. When he returned home, he finally unlocked it. The screen lit up with notifications. Dozens. Most were from coworkers, a few from old friends. A couple were from unknown numbers, probably reporters. He ignored everything except the message from an unfamiliar but official-sounding name. It was from Victoria's legal office. Meeting was scheduled for 1 p.m. He stared at the message for a long moment. This was really happening. At 1 p.m. Evan found himself stepping into a tall glass building downtown. The security guard greeted him politely, though he could tell the man was trying to figure out why someone dressed in a worn jacket and simple shoes was walking into one of the city's most expensive offices. He checked in, took the elevator up, and soon stepped into a quiet lobby lined with sleek furniture. Victoria wasn't there. Instead, her assistant, the same one from the night before, stood waiting with a clipboard. "Good afternoon," the assistant said, giving him a polite but nervous smile, as if still recovering from the shock of what Victoria promised. Please come with me. Evan followed him down a hall and into a conference room. Papers were spread across a long table. A lawyer nodded at him. Mr. Carter, welcome. Please, take a seat. Evan sat, his hands clasped together tightly. The lawyer slid a folder toward him. Last night, Miss Hawley made a verbal commitment. Today, we are here to formalize it. Evan's throat felt dry. Is she coming? She will join shortly, the lawyer replied. The assistant muttered under his breath. If she doesn't change her mind on the way. Evan pretended not to hear that the lawyer explained the details carefully. It wasn't the entire inheritance. It would take time and legal steps, but it was still life-changing. A large trust fund would be transferred to Evan, giving him enough to support Lily's needs, pay off debts, and secure their future. Evan listened quietly, barely able to breathe. Every word felt like something impossible, slowly becoming real. Finally, the door opened. Victoria stepped inside. She wore a simple black outfit today. No extravagant jewelry, no dramatic makeup. She looked calm but serious. When her eyes met Evan's, something softened in her expression. Sorry I'm late, she said as she took a seat. It's fine. Evan replied quietly. The lawyer continued explaining the documents until everything was clear. I want to be sure, Victoria said suddenly, cutting in, that you understand this is not charity. It's me honoring a promise. You earned this. Evan nodded. I understand. And you're comfortable with the arrangement? She asked. I'm grateful, he said. More than you know. She looked down at the table for a moment, then back at him. Good. The papers were signed. Just like that, his life changed. It didn't feel real right away. It felt distant, almost dreamlike. But the weight in his chest began to lift slowly, like something heavy was finally letting go. When the meeting ended, Victoria walked with him to the elevator. You must think I'm still a little crazy, she said with a small laugh. A little, Evan admitted honestly, but in a good way. She smiled at that. I'm glad. There was a short pause before she added, So, about your daughter. Evan tilted his head slightly. What about her? I meant what I said last night, she told him. I'd like to meet her one day. No pressure. Just, I want to understand what shaped your music. He didn't answer right away. He was cautious, but something in Victoria's expression made him trust her more than he expected. Maybe we can arrange something soon, he finally said. Her smile grew. I'd like that. The elevator opened. Before he stepped inside, she said softly. And Evan, I'm glad you showed up last night. Truly. He nodded, holding her gaze. I'm glad you listened. She seemed touched by that. Then the elevator doors closed. Life changed quickly after that. The next few days were a blur. News outlets picked up the story. Single father stuns billionaire became a headline. Some papers tried to make it sound dramatic, some overly sentimental. But Evan tried not to pay attention. He focused on Lily. Her appointments were scheduled. Better doctors, more frequent checkups. Something he could never afford before. He quit the second job, the one that kept him away from home too long. We'll be okay now, he told Lily. I'll have more time with you. Her response was simple. She hugged him for a long time. He still played the piano at the cafe, though he didn't need the money anymore. The owner tried to insist on paying him more, calling him famous now, but Evan refused. I play because I love it, he said, not because it's a job. People came to watch him play. Some recorded him. Some cried quietly. Some just listened in silence. And every evening he would check his phone, wondering if Victoria would message. She didn't show up at the cafe. Not yet, but she did send short texts. How's Lily feeling today? Let me know if you need anything. When you're ready, I'd still like to meet her. There was something gentle in her words, something different from the cold, confident person he had met that first night. One afternoon, Lily came home from school, humming a tune. Evan looked up. "What's that?" "A song I heard today," she said. It sounded fancy. Evan smiled, recognizing the melody. It was from a Chopin piece. "Do you like it?" he asked. "Yeah," she nodded. "It sounds like the kind of music you play when you're thinking about Mom." His breath caught for a moment. But before he could respond, Lily added cheerfully, "Can your new friend visit us? The lady you told me about?" Evan blinked. "My new friend?" "Yeah," she said. "The one who made you smile a little." He laughed softly. "Maybe soon." Lily nodded, satisfied. And that evening, after she went to bed, Evan finally sent Victoria a message. "Lily would like to meet you." The reply came faster than he expected. "Tell me when and where." "I'll be there." Evan stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling something shift gently inside him. For the first time, the idea of her meeting his daughter didn't make him nervous. It felt right. It felt like the start of something new, and the night air outside his window seemed to hum softly, like distant piano notes settling into place, hinting that their story was far from over. The day Victoria was supposed to meet Lily arrived much sooner than Evan expected. He spent the morning cleaning the small apartment. Not because Victoria cared about things like dust or clutter. She didn't seem like someone who judged that, but because he wanted the place to feel welcoming. More than anything, he wanted Lily to feel comfortable. Lily helped in her own little way, humming as she folded small piles of laundry and placed her toys neatly in her basket. She was excited. Evan could see it in the bounce in her steps and the bright curiosity in her eyes. "Is she nice?" Lily asked for the third time that morning. Evan smiled softly. "I think she's trying to be. She's learning how to be nicer to people she doesn't know." "How come?" He thought for a moment. "Because some people grow up surrounded by things instead of people, and they don't notice what they're missing until someone shows them." Lily nodded as if she understood perfectly. "Maybe she needs a friend." Evan froze slightly. He hadn't thought of it like that, but maybe Lily was right. Maybe Victoria wasn't just impressed by the music. Maybe she was lonely. A little before noon, Evan received a message. "I'm on my way." He took a slow breath and glanced around. Everything was tidy enough. Lily had put on her favorite blue dress, the one with butterflies printed on the skirt. She twirled in it happily. "Do I look okay, Dad?" "You look perfect," he said, touching her cheek. When the knock came at the door, it was gentle but firm. Evan opened it slowly. Victoria stood outside, not in fancy clothes or business attire, but in jeans and a simple cream sweater. Her hair was tied back, and for the first time, she looked ordinary. Not in a negative way, more like she had stepped out of her world and into theirs with the intention of fitting in instead of standing out. "Hi," she said with a warm, slightly nervous smile. "Hi," Evan replied. She looked past him and saw Lily peeking from behind his leg. "That must be your daughter," Victoria said softly. Lily stepped forward. "Are you the lady who cried at my dad's music?" Evan nearly choked. "Lily." But Victoria laughed, a real laugh, light and unforced. "Yes," she said. "That was me." Lily looked pleased with herself and walked up to her. "Do you want to see my drawings?" "I would love to," Victoria replied. Evan stepped aside, letting her in. She glanced around the apartment, taking it in quietly. There was no judgment in her eyes, just curiosity. Lily grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the small table near the window where she kept her crayons. Victoria followed without hesitation. Evan watched from the kitchen, amazed by how natural it looked, this billionaire woman sitting in a tiny apartment, leaning over a coloring book while Lily explained each picture with enthusiasm. He began making tea, trying to hide the smile forming on his face. The visit unfolded so gently that Evan didn't realize how much time had passed until he checked the clock. Victoria didn't rush anything. She listened to Lily's stories. She helped her color a picture. She asked simple questions about school, hobbies, favorite snacks. It wasn't forced. It wasn't charity. It was genuine. When Lily ran to her room to bring another drawing, Victoria glanced at Evan. "She's wonderful," she said softly. "She is," he agreed. "You've done a good job," she added. Evan looked away for a moment, trying to process the compliment. "I just do what I can." "Sometimes," she said gently, "that's more than enough." Lily came running back with another drawing, this time of a piano. "It's Dad," she announced proudly. "He plays when he's thinking about Mom." Victoria's eyes softened as she looked at the drawing. "It's beautiful," she told Lily. "You're very talented." Lily beamed. Eventually, Lily settled onto the couch with her coloring book, giving the adults a moment to talk. Victoria took a sip of tea, and Evan noticed her hands were a little shaky. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. She let out a breathy laugh. "Yes, I didn't want to say the wrong thing." "You're doing fine," he assured her. "I wasn't sure if she'd like me," Victoria admitted. "Children usually don't." "Why would you think that?" "Because I'm not used to being around them," she said. "And I think they can sense when someone's pretending." "I didn't want to pretend today." Evan studied her face, noticing the vulnerability she rarely showed in public. "You don't need to pretend here," he said. "Just be yourself." She smiled softly. "I'm still learning who that is." They talked more quietly after that, and Lily would occasionally run over to show something new. The atmosphere felt warm and easy, as if Victoria had been visiting for years. After some time, Lily grew sleepy and curled up on the couch with her bear. Evan covered her with a blanket. Victoria watched with a soft expression. "She's very attached to you," she whispered. "She's all I have," Evan said simply. Victoria nodded slowly. "You know, most people with money think being a parent is something that can be scheduled or delegated. But watching you, I think I understand it differently." He raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "You don't take care of her because you should," she said. "You take care of her because you love her. Everything you do circles back to her. That's what being a parent is," he said. She held his gaze for a long moment. "I wish I had that growing up." There it was, that quiet sadness she carried beneath all her confidence. "You can still have it," Evan said gently. "Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's who shows up for you." She looked down, blinking away something emotional. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The apartment felt peaceful, filled only with the soft sound of Lily's breathing. Eventually, Victoria stood up reluctantly. "I should go," she said. "I don't want to disturb her." Evan walked her to the door. Before she stepped out, she turned to him. "Thank you for letting me meet her," she said. "It means more than you know." Evan nodded. "Thank you for being kind to her." Victoria hesitated for a second, then said softly, "I'd like to see you both again." "If that's okay?" Evan's heart thudded once. "Not fast, not panicked, just steady." "I think we'd like that," he said. Her smile warmed. "Good." She stepped outside, and Evan walked her to the stairwell. Before she left, she paused. "The night you played? I told you it made me feel something real." Today, meeting her, felt just as real. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. She walked down the stairs slowly, and Evan stood watching until she reached the bottom and waved. After she disappeared around the corner, Evan returned inside and sat down quietly beside his sleeping daughter. He looked at her peaceful face and felt grateful. Not for the money, not for the attention, but for the way life had shifted so unexpectedly. He thought about the music, about the promise, about the woman who walked into their lives without warning. It felt like the beginning of something gentle, something honest. Not a fairy tale, not a fantasy, just two lives crossing paths in a way neither had planned. In the weeks that followed, things continued to change. Victoria visited often, not in a dramatic, flashy way, but with quiet care. Sometimes she brought Lily small gifts, not expensive ones, but thoughtful ones. Sometimes she came just to listen to Evan play. Sometimes she joined them for dinner, laughing at Lily's stories. The more time they spent together, the more natural it felt. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Victoria sat beside Evan on the small couch. "I've been thinking," she said softly. Evan looked at her. "About what?" "About what matters," she said. "About what I want my life to look like. And I think I want moments like this." He didn't rush to respond. He didn't want to break the honesty of her words. "Moments with you and Lily," she added. His heart warmed in a way he couldn't quite describe. Not all stories needed grand endings. Some simply needed a new beginning. Evan reached over and gently placed his hand on hers. Her fingers curled around his. No promises. No pressure. Just understanding. Just something real. And as the evening settled over the quiet apartment, it became clear that the challenge that began as a joke had turned into something none of them had expected. Not wealth, not fame, but connection, the kind that could change a life, maybe even three.